Hello, so going to be exploring some fan stuff. I've only got a rough plan, I'll be kind of figuring it out as I go along, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, let's start with some basic slide stuff. So this is my own terminology, I don't know whether other people have other terms for this, but I would call this a line slide, because if you imagine like this line like extending off to infinity, it's staying on the same line that this like edge of the fan is creating. Whereas this I would call a parallel slide, because it ends up on a line that's parallel to the original line. So if it like starts here, then it's now like parallel to the line that it was on. And then if you were to do like a diagonal, then you could call it like a diagonal slide or a combination slide or something like that. So yeah, if we start with some basic line slide stuff, so you can do sliding them from being side by side to being stacked. So you can do like something like this. So sliding from underneath and then sliding to on top. So here we're moving one fan at a time, and you can also do like moving both fans apart at the same time, like that. And then we can do vertical stuff, so we can just like slide together and then slide past each other, or we can do in one slide, sliding like that. And yeah, it seems pretty basic, but it should like build up to more complicated stuff. And then yeah, if we have them in a right angle, I would still consider these line slides, because it's like relative to itself, it's not relative to the other fan. So we can do this kind of plus shape where we're sliding one at a time like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then our arms get kind of twisted up, so then you have to reverse it back the other way. And then we can also do a slide like at the same time, like that. I mean, I guess there's a slight offset because this one would hit against this if you do them literally same time, but that type of thing. And then later we can combine it with like pivoting and stuff. That one's slightly different, I think, having like 4 fan lengths rather than, I think the previous one was only 3 fan lengths like this. And then yeah, let's play with parallel slides. So yeah, so you can do like have them to the side, slide to the center, and then the other one follows it, something like that. Or you can have it slide all the way across and then this one follows it. And then we can do that same kind of thing vertically. You could do like this, or in one go, like that. Maybe you could, well, yeah, I mean, this is adding other stuff in there, but we can add a rotation there, and then do that. We don't need to be too strict about it being purely one concept. And then for a diagonal pattern, we can do this, and then rotate our arms around in an extension circle. And then we have our box pattern using parallel slides, which is similar to the plus sign line slide one. And then you might notice that they share positions, so we could, do the boxy one, and then now we're in a right angle, so we could do the line slide one, and then do a box over there or something. Like they fit together quite nicely. the line slide one and the parallel slide one. And then, yeah, you try like freestyling a bit with line slides and parallel slides. It can be good to have like a restriction and then like explore that and find like the freedom within the restriction. That makes sense. So do, you know, parallel slide, line slide, parallel slide, line slide, like this kind of thing. We can like travel around. But yeah, I mean, you could break it down into like specific things, like we can parallel slide across here and then line slide, so we're just like traveling across like this. Or you can do kind of like stairs like this. Stuff like that. And then, yeah, I guess we'll get into pivoty stuff. So, yeah, I was thinking about, so like in Poi we have 3 different planes, you know, like same applies to fans. So you have wall plane, like a wall in front of you, wheel plane by your side, like this, and then floor plane, like this. But there's also, with fans, because it's basically a 2-dimensional object, like represents a 2D object, you know, kind of like a piece of paper. And there's 3 different axes through which you can rotate it. So, yeah, my terminology for it, I would call this the slice plane, because the fan is like slicing through the air, you know, there's like not much, you could imagine this as like a blade and you're like attacking someone or something. So, but yeah, regardless of what plane it's in, I would still call this the slice axis, still like independent. Okay, and then this, yeah, I don't know, I was gonna thinking like pancake axis is a descriptive term, because like in ring juggling and stuff you get pancake toss like this. It's like you're flipping a pancake in a pan. So anything where it's rotating this kind of axis would be considered like the pancake axis with my terminology. Maybe I'll find a better name for it. But I was also thinking sort of like fanning axis, like you're cooling yourself down, but it's kind of a bit lame. And then we have the third one, which is I call the staff axis, because if you think of this as being is like a straight line similar to a staff, then you could draw like geometric shapes like this with pretending it's a staff. But yeah, even if you do it to your side like this or whatever, then I would still, or floor plane like this kind of thing, then I would still consider that the staff axis through which it's being rotated. So it's about the fan being rotated through this axis. So yeah, then I guess we can start with the third one, maybe the staff axis. So you have this, which I would do in tutting, or I would do the same thing with my hands like this. So starting like pinky sides together, and then here like thumb sides are together. And then you can also do it with like quarter rotations rather than half rotations. So yeah, let's continue. And then, yeah, I mean that's like the staff's taking turns to move, like you could also move them at the same time. Which maybe is not that exciting on its own, but then you can like combine it together. Some pattern of like this, and then going one at a time. But yeah, you can do can do like stair type thing with pivots. So 90 degrees here, this one follows it, and 90 degrees, and that follows it. But we could also do like this, so they're both moving at the same time. So I'm isolating this one here and this one here, and then trying to do those isolations at the same time. So yeah, if you practice this one, then it's essentially the same thing, except they're both doing that pivot at the same time. And we could do this 4-step pattern, so they're both rotating as a fixed shape, and then they're rotating to make like the corner on the opposite side, and then over the top, and then switch to the other side. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are some patterns using what I would call the staff axis. And then let's explore some in another axis. So to explore kind of this slice axis, it's like you could kind of do the same type of thing and just have them stacked like this, so they're making kind of an oval shape, and then do the same kind of patterns, like that sort of thing. But yeah, what makes this axis more unique is that it has this rolling element. So yeah, you know, a lot of people probably know this type of move, and you get like behind the back variations and stuff. But yeah, you can, so other stuff you can play with, like that kind of thing. And here it's like they're rolling along each other. So yeah, you could think, so when you're doing like this, you could think of that as being similar to this. So here they're like rolling along each other, but here it's rolling like it's an actual wheel, you know, like it's traveling along a line, whereas here it's kind of rolling in the opposite direction that it's traveling. So like, you know, if it was an actual wheel on a surface, it would be going backwards. So it wouldn't really work if it was on a surface. So that's an interesting thing to notice. You can do like this type of thing. Another thing to mention about the staff axis is that we have kind of a limitation in terms of how much we can rotate it. So exploring more of the pivoting stuff. So if we're here like palm up, that's kind of like pretty much the most you can rotate it outwards. You could go like this, but then it's going to be quite awkward. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4. So like, so if you rotate it 360 degrees like that, then it's a bit awkward in this position, but it is possible. So you can play with like this kind of thing. But then if you try and rotate both at once, it's quite awkward. You can get into this kind of diagonal position, and then you can do like like these type of moves. So here I've got pinkies together, flip it to the other side, and then doing parallel diagonal slides. 1, 2, 3, 4, flip. 1, 2, 3, 4, flip. But yeah, having this restriction of having about 360 degrees maximum flip affects what geometry you can draw, obviously. Like, you don't have that restriction so much in this plane because you can spin it as many times as you want. But then it's kind of maybe not as clear for drawing geometry as if you have a straight line. So yeah, it'd be good to come up with ways of kind of like allowing you to do more rotation than 360 degrees. So like one option would be doing a throw like that, but it's kind of awkward. And there's this type of thing which lets you rotate it in that axis, but the fan is pointing down because of gravity. If you try and do that with it up here, then it's very hard. You'd have to, I mean, look, if I support it here, then I can do that. But, but normally it would require some kind of lift, having that kind of moment of weightlessness in order to do that. Like, you can also try kind of like finger spinning it like this, but again, that's very awkward. So that's something that's worth thinking about. Like, is there some way that we can continue our rotations so that we can draw like and spin petals and stuff in this plane without it being really annoying? Probably the throws can get a bit cleaner with practice. One thing you can do for this problem of having to like twist back and forth, which doesn't like solve the problem like properly in terms of being able to keep on spinning it the same way, but what it does is present a different visual to the audience, so you're not just like literally doing an and spin and then reversing it. What you can do is that and then add in a spin. So then you're technically still like twisting back and forth, but because, you know, one is done as an anti-spin and the other's done as a spin like that, and then I guess you could also do like include isolation as well. So you could do something like that too. Or isolation, spin, isolation, spin. You can include like things like that, so then it presents a different visual to the audience, so then they wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't see you as just going back and forth, like repeating yourself. But it would ideally be good to have a way to like keep on spinning in the same directions. Yeah, you could do something with both, like this, for example. So you're doing box anti-spin side by side, and then twisting the both 360. But yeah, doing that, and then it's a bit tricky when you get to this position. But yeah, I suppose that's another option. You don't have to twist both in all the way to here. What you can do is like that. So I'm doing like anti-spin, anti-spin, and then just doing half a twist, anti-spin, anti-spin, half a twist. So rather than going all the way around and then doing 360 twist, I'm going half the way around, doing half a twist, and then another halfway around, doing another half twist. Like that. But yeah, if you do them side by side, then see now they're like touching each other, so you can't do a twist as normal. You could do like this where the wicks come apart and then together, or you could have them with some separation between them. And yeah, imagine you can do like this as well. Yeah, that works too. And then, yeah, the third axis, which I've called like the pancake axis. So we have yeah, I guess one interesting thing is like how do you make it go around in a circle? You know, because you have these kind of folds of like folding it to the back of your arm and folding it to the front of your arm. But yeah, interesting thing you can do is flip it there, have it go round in a circle, and then flip again, like that, and that way you can go round and round in a circle. And the other way, of course. And I'm not doing it very cleanly, but you know, the idea is there. And with both, you know, we can do stuff like that. I guess you could flip both, and then it's essentially the same concept, but with your arms to the front. And we could do similar stuff with it, like this maybe. Like that, for example. And yeah, here, you know, if you want to know, there's no longer purely in the axis that I was saying of that like pancake one here. I'm rotating it in the staff axis, you know, so now it's becoming a combination of different axes, which is ultimately what you want, you know, to be able to combine all of the different slides and, you know, rotating it, flipping it, whatever, in different axes in combination. But I think it's important to practice each one individually so that you can understand the different components, like the fundamentals of the prop. And then that gives you all of the different kind of Lego blocks which you can stick together in different ways. If that makes sense. Yeah, let's show some more moves. So this would be like flipping it in the pancake axis, you could call it. You know, you could rotate it around this way as well. And this, for example, I think it's nice to do a flip at the top and bottom. So then it's pancake axis here, and then staff axis at the top and bottom with the flip. So that's combination one. And then you have this, for example, where it's thumbs together, does this roll across. So that's the slice axis, and then here rotating it in the staff axis with the ends being isolated, and then over to the other side, thumbs together, and then flip back to the beginning. So far we've kind of done both fans flipping in the same axis. Another thing to explore is having each fan flipping in a different axis. So, I don't know, what would be a good use of it? I don't know. do, okay, something like this, for example. This one's flipping the staff axis, and this one's going in the pancake axis. And we could swap them. And then we could do like staff versus slice axis, maybe something like that. And then you've got to do like an isolated spin if you want to keep the ends together, which is kind of a new technique which I haven't explored yet, but yeah, I guess I can teach that. So you're kind of changing your grip to like this, so that then this wick is being isolated here, and then when you get to this point, the weight will kind of keep it there, so then you can rotate your hand around again and go over the top. But it can help to have some amount of friction here, so that like as the gravity is pulling it down, you're slightly resisting it, so that, I don't know. Because I don't know, if you rotate it all the way to here, then it's going to stay there, gravity's not going to be acting on it, but then it's maybe a bit more of an awkward position, whereas if you have it a bit of a diagonal, but you're like counteracting the pull of gravity with the friction of your hand, then maybe it's, I don't know, it can help if you want to go for that technique rather than needing to have it horizontal. But yeah, then you would sort of try and like practice those isolations. You could do it in the same time, like that. And then like go for split time when you go down. Not that I can do it that well. But yeah, you could call this you know, rotating it through the slice axis, but adding in an isolation. And yeah, when we flip it in the staff axis, it's quite easy to do, to isolate it. We would typically do that, but you can, of course, obviously do a flip where it's rotating around the center rather than with the wick. So could explore like this, for example. So those thumb side wicks are staying together. And then if you're comfortable with that, you could try isolating this bottom wick, but keeping those top wicks together. And then we have this, and then we isolate this wick up here and go on the other side. So isolate the wick in the center, this flattens into a line and then folds together here, and then we isolate the wick on the other side, line here. And again, this is cutting inspired move, like though I guess it's maybe also kind of inspired by Poi, because yeah. And yeah, like you could explore trying to do that same move in this axis perhaps. Or like what happens if you do it in this axis. Yeah, that's one interesting idea, is like, can you take geometric kind of moves you do, and then see if it's possible to do them in each of the 3 different axes. So it gives it a different visual, and also like potentially like different transitions into other moves that you already know. Yeah, with these combinations of rotating the fans in different axes, it's also good to consider that those rotations through the axes can be in each of the different planes. So you kind of would have 3 times 3 times 3 for each fan. So we could do like slice axis in wall plane, slice axis in wheel plane, slice axis and floor plane. So that's 3, and then the same for the other 2 planes. So then we have 9 options for each fan, as well as you know, whether we're doing like an isolated one where we're keeping the wick still, or the center. So potentially like up to 18 different versions, although it might be a bit weird, some of them. So, you know, then if you have like 18 options for each fan and then 18 for the other, then there's like many different combinations of how you could combine them together. But I guess for simplicity's sake, it might make sense to have them both be in the same plane but rotate through a different axis to start with. So we could have them both in wall plane, but you know, this one's in slice plane, this one's in staff plane. Do something basic like that. And then we could have this one in like pancake plane, this one in slice plane, and then pancake versus slice. But yeah, you know, so here I'm doing my hand is the point which is connected to this one, and they're staying stuck together. But I could also have like them be connected here or connected here, you know, which would give a different effect, you know. And I was moving them in like opposites, but you could also move them like in split time, like this. So yeah, there's an awful lot of different like combinations. I could potentially do a video going through them systematically. So another good thing to play with is your fan relations and different ways to cycle through them. So for example, we can do C relation, and slide one into CC relation, flip into O relation, and then slide them out into X relation, and then slide like this to S relation, and then I relation. So I think that's all of them. And then, yeah, you can think about like what axis each is rotating through and that kind of thing. So here, if we're going from I to S relation, then they're both rotating 90 degrees through what I would call pancake plane. And here it's like having them at the front, but it would technically still be an I relation if it was over here, I believe. So then you could rotate one of them 180 degrees rather than rotating both of them opposite directions in 90 degrees. And then that could give you something like that if you wanted to go from I relation but pointing to the side into S relation and then back to I relation, and then you could do a slide like that maybe, and then you have this interesting move where it's just a combination of I relation and S relation and adding a slide in. Yeah, explore something else, maybe like O relation and X relation. So you could maybe do something like this, or the other direction, or rotating it to horizontal, and then that kind of thing, or you know, same in diagonal to like maybe do that or something. And yeah, you could go to the bottom diagonal as well. But there's also this transition between O relation and X relation, where rather than using a slide, what we call a parallel slide, we're instead rotating through this pancake plane thing. And then you can again flip that into horizontal if you'd like. And then I guess like this kind of move, you could think of that as going between C relation into C relation. It's kind of a bow and arrow type concept. And then, you know, think about like moving it through space kind of thing. But yeah, I guess here if you're doing this kind of slide, you may be temporarily going through an I relation here, where you could pause it and like come out at a different angle or something. Maybe do something with W relation into X relation. I mean, this is quite similar to, you know, if you're doing these kind of figure of eights, then you could consider that this an X relation here, this W relation here. So we kind of end up playing with this rolling kind of a thing. But, you know, if you consider pausing in these positions, then you can think, you know, like, oh, this X relation, I can extend it up or down or rotate and do it to the side or on a diagonal or whatever you want. Or maybe even out like this, you know. Creative, like with all the different directions you can do it, rather than just having it be one move. It's like becomes a whole like way of moving kind of thing. Lots of possibilities to explore. So you go, for example, out here and then rotate back into the center and then maybe do something like that. And you can have some kind of like cross shape thing or whatever. And then yeah, like this transition between W relation and I relation, we're kind of like sort of doing this rotation as well as this, which is kind of like an isolation plus an anti-spin. But it kind of becomes one fluid movement doing this thing. And then you can maybe think about like what would happen if I did that but like up top instead. So maybe in this position, it seems, yeah, like you kind of want the pinkies on the inside. If you have thumbs on the inside, I guess that can work too. Just feels more natural having the pinkies there. Yeah, I suppose it works both ways. And you could maybe end up with something like this. And then what if we had the line be horizontal instead and come up to this? So I showed how in this staff axis, I call it, that you can rotate around the center or you can isolate one of the ends. And then with the slice plane, you can, you know, just spin around your hand being at center, or you can try and isolate one of the wicks with this technique I showed. But then I didn't show the like pancake plane thing yet. So if we take like this kind of a flip, then you can try isolating it like that. So you can do like this kind of thing. So then I'm switching between trying to isolate this center wick and then doing a non-isolated version. So that's making kind of a figure of 8. And we can do that same thing vertically, like this. Probably easier that way. Yeah, grip-wise I'm kind of going between the like thumb grip and this sort of grip. Yeah, I guess you should be able to do an isolated version of this. I guess it looks something like that. And vertically. Like that. Yeah, so at the beginning I showed sliding with line slides and parallel slides, and then was showing different ways of like rotating or flipping or pivoting or whatever you want to call it. So then we can try combining together slides with pivoty stuff. So that would be a basic one, so sliding across and then spinning around in a split seam. So you get a 4-step pattern like that. And then, yeah, just need to like explore staff geometry a bit. So if you have like the backs of your hands together here, then you can do anti-spin like that up into a straight line. And then here. But yeah, I guess that's what I'm going to do. So folding out into a line, anti-spin, fold out, anti-spin. But you could also do the anti-spin first and then fold, anti-spin, fold. And then you can do that in different like configurations. You can do yeah, anyway, so for our slide one, so we can do like this. So here it would be pinkies together at this point, so we're doing like isolating this one as this one slides across, and then isolating this as this slides across. Then now it's flipped the other way, so I've got to do anti-spin versus slide. Like that, and then same across the bottom, like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. But yeah, I guess it's a bit weird to like because it's easy to like do the anti-spin and have this like this, but then you'd end up in a like a straight line position. So what you want is for, at this point, as the slide is halfway across, this would be halfway through its anti-spin, so you'd be in like a T shape temporarily. T isn't a relation, is it? I don't know why not. But, or right angle. Is there an L relation? I don't know, I feel like there should be. Anyway. It's a bit of a tangent, but yeah, and then same for the isolation bit. As this is halfway through its isolation, this should be in an upside down T here. Yeah, I guess that's a simpler pattern. So you can do, you know, to get one fan from one side to the other, you can do a slide, or you can also do rotating like that. So then you can combine the two together. So yeah, I think you'd want to do it like that. So pinkies together at this point. So then I'm sliding this across and rotating this. You might want to do it one step at a time. And then sliding this across, rotating this. Here's another pattern, so you could do like this one's doing isolation like this as this one slides up, so that, and then this one anti-spins out, and then this one anti-spins up, and this one rotates down. So then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. You kind of two isolations and two like anti-spins. So it probably makes sense to start it up here and then go anti-spin. Okay, so yeah, if you wanted to start like, let's say before both the anti-spins, then you would want to have both palms to the left. So if you have palms down and then flip it this way, then you anti-spin versus slide, anti-spin versus slide, and then we have isolation versus slide. So now the palms would be pointing to the right instead. Isolation versus slide, isolation versus slide. But yeah, we basically have to switch between like anti-spins and isolations because of this like rotation limit. So they kind of like untwist each other kind of thing. They're like twisting back in the other direction. So this maybe you definitely want fireproof sleeves on if you're going to do it on fire. It looks like this. So we have them in a line out here, flipping pancake axis and then switching to staff axis, flipping back out. And you could reverse reverse that one. And then you could do it different timings, like this. I don't know if we could do it like one step ahead, that's probably quite hard. It's a lot of brain power, but it is possible. Just doing random moves now, but this one is fairly simple. So I'm opening up into O relation as my arms move in like a semicircle far away from me, and then keeping the center wicks together, folding like that. And I wonder how that would look vertically. Do like a cross shape. Well, more of an hourglass, and go across in it like an X. This one is probably only really going to be possible if you can fit your fan here inside your elbow, so you probably don't want it to be too big. Maybe if your arm can go like in between the spokes, then it might work still. But yeah, so we start here. So like the back hand, the palm's facing forward, and back of the hand is facing to the front for your front hand. And then so we're penduluming this one and catching it again. And this one is doing like half isolation jump. So like that, so you're aiming to keep the center wick still. And going back and forth like that. So here, so we're going from O relation to X relation. And then here, this has to pendulum inside your arm, so that'll be harder if your fans are big. Whilst this one is folding here, so like that. So then we're back in O relation in the middle. And then it's a symmetrical pattern, so we're doing the same on the other side. So this folds open as this pendulums. And then again, this one pendulums as this jumps over. So going O relation here, X, and then O in the middle, X, and then O here again. So we've got 3 O's, 2 X's. And so I was saying before about freestyling with like line slides like this and parallel slides that and that. But you can also add like these kind of rotations to it where you're isolating, and then you can do a lot of like geometric stuff where you're just playing around with like exploring geometry. And yeah, I guess you can add anti-spins to that as well, which you could kind of think of in a way as being like a rotation plus kind of a sliding around a corner sort of thing. Like you're doing that rotation whilst moving it like the center would be moved from here to here. Well, but yeah, so and then yeah, you can get into strange like positions like this where you're kind of stuck almost. And then yeah, that's getting into different planes and yeah, that's an interesting thing. Yeah, but yeah, if you just play around with those slides and flips and anti-spins and stuff, then you can discover quite a lot. But yeah, here I wanted to do this, but I realized that, you know, if your fans are like this, they're going to hit each other. So then you need to have one further forward than the other in order for them to not hit. Yeah, if you want a specific pattern that includes all four of those things, then you can have, for example, starting like this and then isolating the outer wicks, doing parallel slide together, vertical slide upward, and then doing anti-spin like that for quarter rotation, and then flipping this back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, I'm sure you could come up with other variations. Like start with a vertical, maybe start with a slide, and then, so yeah, you probably want this one pinky up. So you could start here like thumbs together and slide, so then you can do anti-spin, anti-spin, and then I guess maybe parallel slides out here and then pivot back into the center. I think that would be another one, wouldn't it? So thumbs together here, line slide, anti-spin 180 degrees, parallel slide out to the side, and then pivoting into the center. I guess that's not a looping pattern, is it? But yeah, I guess if you just then rotated this vertical, then it would be a looping pattern. 1, 2, 3. And then, yeah, I guess if you rotated it the other way, then you could do it on the other side, like. Here's a random throw, so throwing it from out here and catching it with here inside your elbow with your arm around, so you can loop it like that, catching here and then folding back out, and then if you practice it the other side, then you can do alternating like that. And then try go for the double throw. So I was talking earlier about this issue of if you're rotating it through staff playing, then you get kind of twisted up like this, and then it's awkward to try and like reset your position so that you can go around again. But something I realized was that if you do this, you can untwist by doing this switch, like spinning it through pancake plane. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then spinning like that, which is quite cool because an audience quite likely wouldn't even realise that you're doing it in order to untwist your arm. Just a cool thing you can do. And yeah, then you could reverse that. So now it's anti-spinning the other way. And then there was a weird thing I was exploring where I'm kind of like spinning it through this anti-spin, but then doing quarter of a rotation on each one. So I was doing like just to mark a particular side of my fan, doing this. So I rotate it up, and then I'm rotating it through pancake plane in the direction of the wick side, like this open. So rotating up and then rotating quarter, rotating here, rotating a quarter again, rotating and then rotating a quarter and then rotating here, and then like that. So it's weird. It's kind of like it's rotating through staff plane and then also spinning like this as it's rotating. But yeah, like an interesting thing to note about that is that this way is that I can do it on repeat because my arm doesn't get twisted up, because it's kind of, yeah, it seems the double twist kind of, they like cancel each other out. There's sort of like twisting in opposite directions in some way. So that's potentially rather useful. Okay, so the other thing I was going to say is that it's not technically just a combination of staff plane and pancake plane, because when I'm doing this transition, it becomes slice plane now because the fan's been rotated. That means that it's no longer doing this, it's doing this, so that's technically slice plane. So the move technically like includes all three of the different axes, but yeah, I'd say it's kind of easier to think of it as a staff plane rotation that's also like spinning as it's rotating. But yeah, there's probably other variations on that kind of concept of kind of combining together two axes. And then let's play around with a bit of vertical stack stuff. So there's this. I'm basically just doing like buzzsaw with one at a time, but I'm trying to have it land on top of the other so that they're in a straight line to present this stacking, and then you can do that in reverse like that, but I find it a bit easier in forward. And then you can do this kind of thing as well. Maybe you could do a combo of like that, one in wheel plane, one in wall plane. And then probably do anti-spin somewhere. So I guess you'd probably want to think of that as being like anti-spin with a slide down like that. But yeah, it's a bit hard to see on camera, but I guess you could potentially also do this kind of thing of having like multiple levels, so going up high and down low. Yeah, so another simple one is playing with is doing this fold. So yeah, then you're doing like a full spin here and then fold, fold, 360 spin, fold, fold. And I guess you could do the same in reverse. Jacob's Louder is also a nice one that you could probably combine with this. So you have them stacked together so it's both thumbs pointing up and then hold for. It's a bit more awkward, but you can do it back the other way as well from inside to over here. But it's probably hard to to do a double throw because I'm kind of relying a bit, I think, on like leaning and getting force from my body. I'll just throw it.